Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of The Human Side of Learning and Talent Technology. We are back again with the crew. It's always Chris and Tiffany. My name is Bennett Jensen, and we have another awesome special guest today. We have Jules Carman from Sage, who's the head of Global Alliances and Digital Transformation. And Jules has jumped on with us today to talk a lot about digital transformation, what that means, what Sage is, and why Bluewater and Sage are partnered together to do a lot of great things for organizations. So Jules, welcome aboard. How are you today?
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon. Thank you for having me. I'm doing great.
Awesome, great. We're very excited to have you. Very excited to learn more about you and Sage and everything that Bluewater and Sage and have been doing, and also kind of what the focus is, what your passions are, what you're focused on as part of the organization, and helping our mutual clients, as well as all the
Mhm.
organizations out there that are trying to drive forward digital transformation within learning and talent. So very excited to have you on, Chris. Tiffany, how are things? There's a new background behind you, so is there some exciting news about the Blue Water and what we've been kind of talking about for months now on this podcast?
Well, we actually are in our new office. So Tiffany and I are here. Tiffany's actually on that side of the wall, and but I'm on the other side of her whiteboard. So we are excited to be here, and it's nice to get it started. And next podcast will actually be in our new studio, so we'll have even different background and capabilities. But it's been quite a process. I think we signed the lease back on the 4th of December, and here we are the first week in June, and we're in the office and really excited. We're going to have the entire team coming in beginning next Monday, which is even more exciting. So we're really glad to be here. It's fun to be around people and to walk out the hall and go, "Hey, Tiffany,"
Can I
and
just
others, just
say
to see
how,
people.
how much more we have moved conversations along in the last 3 days because I pass you in the hallway and I'm like, I need 2 minutes instead of having to find time on your calendar. I There's so much I like about working from home, but I'm starting to remember what it is and why I liked being in the office again. And I hope the team see that too when they come in next week.
Yeah,
Absolutely. I think, yeah, it'll be a fun transition back just to see faces and see people again regularly that you have been seeing over a camera for so many months, and almost, or I guess, over a year now.
Far too long.
But also, just like you said, Tiffany, just the fact that you can pop around the corner and ask someone a question versus trying to chase them down on Skype, or try to find a time on their calendar, which sometimes can be okay. I guess I'll ask them this question next week.
Right.
So yeah, it'll be fun. I'm not quite in there yet because I wanted you all to see my face for radio, and the lighting in my office wasn't great. So, but like as Chris said, we'll be back in a studio very soon. So looking forward to all being together and recording um, in that setting. I'm very excited. But Jules, welcome. Like I said, to the podcast. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself and Sage and your role at Sage before we really dive in?
Yeah, thank you. I have been at Sage for 4 years, and I am responsible for helping the organization transform to the cloud and to a SaaS model. And I've been in technology for 30 years, and the other part of uh, my recruitment process with Sage was to help them bring in new global alliances for our financial management and our human capital product lines. Um, and so I've been at it and going full force for the last 4 years, building that line of business, and been pre-pandemic was enjoying traveling around the world, talking about specifically digital transformation and how Sage can fulfill on that journey with the technology platforms that we provide to the market.
Great. For our listeners that may not know, can you just give us a little info on those technology platforms that you mentioned, kind of what Sage's mission is as a
Mhm.
software provider?
Sure. Yeah. On our financial management side, which is what Sage is really known for, it's a 40-year company. It's headquartered in Newcastle, England, and it started out as a, a very seamless accounting software company that has since transformed into not only serving the small, medium-sized businesses, which was what they're very well known for, but after, Sage tends to grow through acquisition. And we've moved up market into the mid market and into the enterprise space as well. And that really started with our acquisition of Sage Intact, which is a financial management solution that provides the entire work stream of financial and accounting management, but also data analytics and budgeting and planning, et cetera. And then on our human capital side, again through acquisition, we have our Sage People solution, and that is what it is. It's a human capital management solution that ties well into all of the experience of the employee, from, we call it the hire to retire work stream, and then folding in our relationship with Bluewater. That solution in and of itself is very complementary to what Bluewater provides on the learning and talent and educational side of that journey for the employee, which is something that we don't offer, that we would prefer to partner.
Great. Yeah, and it's something that we're passionate about too, and it's always fun to have those symbiotic relationships, I guess, with a vendor like yourself, where we
Mm,
can kind of you provide something that we don't do, we provide something that you don't do, and
mm,
it really works well for our mutual clients, and blending that together. Chris,
mm.
looked like you were about to chime in. I was going to ask you kind of what does our partnership kind of mean to Blue Water, and where have just kind of talk about our relationship with Sage as it's been growing over the last year or so.
Yeah, our focus is always going to be on the learning talent technologies, human capital management, and I think that piece of what Jules you're talking about is just very, very important, because as we see organizations that are beginning to look at this digital transformation, and how does that have to happen, or maybe we've already tried it and it failed and it didn't work, and then we need to go back and relook at that. I think there's just this unique opportunity to step back, take a moment, and reflect on what the impact is on the people that the technology is being used for. Right. So if
Mhm,
we're in and we're looking at learning environments, or how are we creating career paths, or how are we just managing the basics around an employee's lifetime at an organization through a product like Sage, then we need to take in a bigger picture that doesn't just say, hey, can I get this technology up and running in the next 2 to 3 weeks? I need to look at this as an evolution over a period of time. And that's what I love. Just, Jules, what we've talked about for a long time is this digital transformation is as much about process between the two organizations. Sage has great technology. We have great process work that we do. Let's go merge that together and help clients do this effectively, and
mhm,
not have the failures that we've seen a lot of companies that have tried to do that, especially over the last 2 years, or even last year during the pandemic. There was a lot of
mhm.
people that are like, man, I just got to ram this piece of technology in, it's going to work. And that's not digital transformation, is it, Jules?
Mm-mm. No, not at all. I mean, digital transformation, the phrase in itself is just what it really means is moving from very manual technologies and processes to digital processes and technologies. And so it's really as simple as that. But we're in technology, and we always have to come up with a catchphrase. So that's the catchphrase. But really, think tanks like MIT have been researching and studying digital transformation for the last 10 years. And to your point, Chris, within I would say the last 4 or 5 years, if you speak to many of the top CEOs and CEOs like yourself, um, 25 years ago, we would have said the backbone of a successful business was really the financial, or led with the financial management of the organization, and that is just not the case anymore. It is absolutely led with the employee experience, with the human capital, and which is why at Sage we made significant investments in that technology platform of Sage People, because we saw that trend coming, along with many other great organizations out there doing the same. But ultimately, when I was talking with a lot of CEOs, and you'll see these statistics that, pre-pandemic, almost 70% of the top CEOs across the world had said that their greatest barrier to really make sure that they were going to have a successful digital transformation strategy was about assessing their culture and assessing their people. And, the drop down from that is about agile training and efficient processes and what have you. But it was really looking at more of the change in the practice management, and whether the culture could actually match to the vision of what the leadership team had entailed. And then, of course, the compliance is also paramount as well. And then probably about 30% of it said that, digital transformation to them was about efficiencies and sharpening up workflow and offloading a lot of the mundane tasks of their employees, and redeploying those employees to more productive, stimulating, fulfilling kind of responsibilities. And as I was talking before, was the technology in the minds of these leaders. It was really not not only a barrier, but it wasn't a worry. 50% of it is that the technology is going to be there. The technology will be chosen once we figure out, with this assessment of our organization and where we want to go, what that gap analysis is. What are we missing? What do we need to change? What do we need to transform to? Then we will look at, that matching that gap with the appropriate technology. So, the position that Bluewater has in the market is invaluable, even more so than the position that I have at Sage. And the reason why I say that is because, the sustainability and the substantialness of that conversation about digital transformation, and really having that innovative conversation, is much more, it's limited for me, because I have that technology logo on my back. At some point, the person's going to look at me and say, okay, what do you want me to buy? But with Bluewater, the priceless position that you guys are in is really helping the organization figure out what, or assess what their employee experience is, and then what the customer's experience is because of those employees. But the information that you get from that assessment are going to be the cues of whether that digital transformation strategy is going to be a success or a failure. So, Chris, going back to what you said, it is hands down all about the people.
Knowing that you're from the software company, right? Obviously, our philosophy is, stick with me, is that the software doesn't solve the problems. We have to identify where the problems are and decide what tools we're going to use. And the software is one of the tools that we use to solve the problem. And I feel like a lot of times, and maybe you see this in the digital transformation process that companies are going through, and maybe this is the first misstep, is immediately people want to go out and say, okay, great, what technology can I get because I want to transform? And is that a misstep that you see happening a lot, or do you see that's kind of a misconception that happens when you're talking with clients?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because and this also goes to the value of our relationship with Bluewater. Bluewater has actually, our relationship has been invaluable to the transformation at Sage. And to your point about starting with the technology, that's just the biggest mistake, because you don't you don't know, what are you buying? Because you don't even know what you need if you haven't gone through that proper assessment and identify where gaps are. And so there's a lot of homework that needs to be done. And so it's not just about the vision of the strategy, but everybody has to be bought in. So, everybody has to be comfortable and resilient to make the change. And going back to what your point is, Tiffany, is that even at Sage, we've led with product, and look at these features and look at this, look at what it can do, look at this tool, look at this, that, or the other, without even qualifying whether it makes sense to even talk about these kinds of accolades about the product. It may be meaningless if the organization needs transformation in an area that is something that we may not even provide.
Sure.
But then if the organization invests in technology, then they're just going to have what I call more technology debt on their books, which is actually what we're trying to get away from in the market, or trying to get away from all of that, all of the band-aids that are sitting in people's IT rooms, along with the technology debt, the cost of that maintenance and that renewal, and technology that's just sitting there that just really isn't giving you any return on investment, besides the fact that it's probably really old.
Yeah, I think that idea of technology debt, that is really interesting. And there may be some people that are listening that don't really understand that
Mm.
term. Could you give us a little bit more definition, Jules, just around technology debt and what you're talking about there?
Yeah, I mean, it's a big subject matter, but it also ties into transformation. And what I mean by that is, when I started saying that, what digital transformation really means is going from all of the manual processes to digital, and manual technology. So it's technology debt is, just picture 20, 30 years ago, when you had a room of huge mainframes and multiple desktops and keyboards and filing cabinets and all of this, physical equipment. All of that is not just a cost for that actual hardware, but there's all of this cost inside of that hardware. There's maintenance costs, there's renewal costs, there's services costs. And if you're not using it, it's just this big number on your spreadsheet that is costing, and the companies kept paying it without assessing whether or not they even need to renew these agreements, or and half the time these agreements are just automatically renewed. So there's that portion of it. And what transformation does, moving into the cloud, into a SaaS model, what that is that it's taking those rooms of equipment away and putting it into the cloud, and paying your technology quote unquote fee as a subscription, and not just as per user, but rather how often you use it each month, or what, and use it by a subscription. So you can pay by month, you can pay by year. It depends on the software, it depends on the company and their model, but it frees up the debt of that technology, because if you don't use it, then you're going to not pay it or stop paying it.
So how many of your clients, or the people that you're out talking to, do you begin to find that they're now more desperate to have a business case than maybe they were in the past? That the organization is really saying, "Hey, I know you need that, but what's the financial side of performance, return, those type of things?" Where do you see the lineup of a business case these days?
Well, these days and we're talking because of the pandemic. These days, that business case is uh, very concise, and the sales cycle is really short. But if you were talking to me in 2008, I was half bald, pulling out my hair, because I was continuing to have to educate on what cloud was, what SaaS was, why it made sense that they needed to do this assessment to move their organization to a more efficient ecosystem and environment. And so there was a lot of education. As we fast forward to today, it's not my job to educate these people anymore. I'm looking for more innovative conversations, because if they haven't figured out what the cloud is by now, because of the last 2 decades it's been in existence, then I don't know what I can do for you. With that said, jumping from 2019 to 2021, suddenly I don't know if the light bulbs went off, or they finally connected the dots, or they just were in this do or die situation, no pun intended, I'm sorry about that one. But truly, really in their face, like, okay, your employees are at home and you cannot function. And especially the areas that are doing, the accounting department, people that are always in the offices that are now no longer couldn't be in the offices, and they couldn't access their information because it was, in a static environment versus, just pulling it from their cloud off their Wi-Fi at home. So, to going back to the business cases, is in the last year and a half is the pandemic. Honestly, that's been the business case right in their face.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, and I was going to kind of ask before about what is the impact the pandemic has had on digital transformation. Is there are some things that people had to make very quick decisions on, or accelerated decisions, or but there are other things that kind of went on the back burner because there were so many other priorities going on. But with people, with software, with the transformation of the technology that they're using, did you see a regression, at least in organizations kind of doing assessments and understanding what they did because they were trying to make such quick decisions and change technologies or advanced technologies? Or did the pandemic kind of still allow them to, or at least the timing of everything, did still allow them to kind of do assessments, or still allow you to go in and say, okay, this is what we're trying to accomplish, let's review and understand kind of what the end goals are and do the assessment? What impacts did March 2020 have on decision makings around technology for organizations you were working with?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm glad you brought that up in the way that you did. I think that there's a bifurcated answer here. One is complete panic, and we need to get you know an environment that can allow us to keep moving the business forward, or just keep the business afloat, by uh, and empowering our employees and providing them with the right tools and um, equipment, if you will, that they need to keep functioning at home, to keep doing their job in a remote location. So there's that panic, and also just um, it depends on the organization, but some organizations y- you know uh, came to us with our Sage People solution, with the human capital solution that we had, and said, can this software furlough? We've never furloughed people, so
Hmm.
there was that immediate panic. But I think that the majority of the organizations had enough education behind them to provide them with being able to make pretty sound decisions in a really rushed, panicky way. The the other I think the other answer is that some organizations were already on their transformational journey, and what it did is it just, as I said before, it just rapidly increased the pace of that journey.
Hmm.
And so where so and they were able to obviously stay afloat as well, but it wasn't just. I think that they had more confidence in dealing with the situation at hand. I think as we sit here today, and why I also think that Bluewater is so well positioned in the market, is that now that things are sort of simmered down, you know, we may have done things in a couple, maybe some of the organizations are in a little bit of a different order. Maybe they did, they had no choice but to uh, pick up the technology, and hopefully a lot of it isn't, a band-aid kind of solution. And now they have to go back and say, okay, now we have to go back and say, what's our vision? What's our strategy? And in order to get what that answer is, we need to assess our organization. We need to assess our people, because if we talk with the employees, you're going to uncover where the frustrations are, where are the gaps. Is it in, does it take 3 months to cut a PO? Can we, can we, provide proper reviews? Can we provide proper benefits based on employees' input? Things like that. It's just a couple of examples, but also going back and making the employees not only more comfortable with the technology and with the new workflows and with this new environment inside of these new walls that they're now in. Are they properly trained? Have they been working in a sort of a waterfall kind of environment, and they now have to be agile, and they don't know really what that means? Just tiny examples here, but this is where Bluewater comes in and really helps them kind of take a step back. Okay, you responded well. Let's take a step back. What is our multi-year forward-looking strategy? How are we going to now scale the business? And how are we going to be prepared for any other thing that may come up? It may not, it may not be a health pandemic. We may have a cyber attack pandemic. How do we deal with that? These changing things in the world, and just be sort of the best armed and ready for it, not only from an physical environment standpoint, but also, an emotionally intelligent standpoint.
Yeah, I think you mentioned a cyber attack pandemic. I just want to take pandemic out of the rest of our vocabularies, and hopefully not.
I'm with you.
All these once in a lifetime events that have been crammed into the last 12 or 15 months. That's enough for us. But no, you're totally right. I think this, as we hopefully are really peeling back from a global pandemic, and everyone's either getting back to work in person, or just back to work on a normal flight path. It's a great time to kind of sit back and say, okay, we made it. We've stayed afloat. We kept our heads above water. Now, how do we completely get out of the water and get everything back on the right track? Whether it's back on the right track where we were before the pandemic, or just back on the new track, on a new path forward based on what we've learned. And I think that's an important thing. But then also in the back of your mind, or maybe in the middle or even front, you've got to be prepared for the next thing, whatever that may be. Prepared for another big hitch, or another big hurdle to cross organizationally, or globally, whatever happens. So it's a great point, and something that I agree. We and Sage and Bluewater are in a great position to say, okay, you have done it. You have that Band-Aid actually held, and it healed some things. Now let's rip that Band-Aid off and repair everything, or reassess everything, or move in the right direction. So.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that is key that I hadn't mentioned yet is that also really goes to your data analytics services that you offer your clients, and Sage clients as well, is as they put together their forward-looking strategy, the confidence that it brings, because also you're basing that forward-looking plan on data. And it's easy to say, but a lot of people say, yeah, I know we have a lot of information and data, but I don't know how to retrieve it. I don't know how to, and then when I do, I don't know really how to read it. I don't know how to transform it into something that is strategic and that's going to be profitable for us. We throw around a lot of this data analytics that will then, bring you data-driven decisions. Well, what does that really mean? And these are also the conversations that happen before you look at the technology, that that I am personally highly dependent on the Bluewater team to come in and help us figure this out before we even talk about technology solutions, because um, the majority of the people that are inside these organizations don't know how to do that. In fact, when we were looking at the research, in 2017 and 18, at the time, it was just organizations were going through turnover with these chief data officers because they didn't know really, what is that? What does it mean to be a data officer? What is the responsibilities? What are the expectations? What are the objectives? It was so hard to kind of write that job description, let alone hire someone and ensure that that person was going to be successful in an organization, because it was just such this open black hole. And it's very pioneering. But I think that today it's still a struggle. And that's something that we haven't been able to deal with in the last year and a half because of, organizations they just needed to survive.
Right.
And then let's just survive. Let's just, keep it, at a baseline. And as we come out of it, let's see how we can come out of it. We're all going to be different, but let's make sure we're even better than what we were before. And that is where I think that there's going to be a lot of organizations knocking on your door.
Jules, it's interesting you're talking about in the conversation of digital transformation and the fact that we're creating data. And I think what we all know in this industry, and a lot of your clients, y'all have got great technology that allows you to collect a tremendous amount of data. But during I can't use that word. Bennett told me I can't use that word anymore.
Mm-hmm.
During the
Mm-hmm.
last 12 months, we've multiplied the amount of data that we're collecting exponentially. And
Mm-hmm.
now you've got great technology. We're collecting more data. What am I going to do with it? And how does that
Mm-hmm.
impact the digital transformation? I mean, these are all, I think, huge questions that organizationally we're going to have a lot to consider. All organizations are going to have to consider, what does that look like? And what's the impact of that data back on people? What's the human side of that? It's not just ones and zeros to give us information around technology, but how's that going to impact Tiffany? How's that going to impact
Yeah.
Ben or Jules or Chris or Kyle or anybody else that's in the middle of this conversation? What does that all look like?
Well, and that's exactly why the research is showing that. So the statistics that we talked about that we garnered in 2017 with the CEO, 70% of them saying it was a cultural barrier, and then it was the lack of operations being dynamic was 30% of them was there, and technology was like, well, what we know it's going to be. Those statistics are now true, and so the data is really the data that's coming from your employee assessment, and equally important is what's the data coming from your customer experience, and that is going to then push your strategy forward. And that is now a whole new world. It's a whole new world now. What they were telling us in 2019 is no longer the same, and like a ton, like you said, Chris, a ton more. And so now that reflects then, okay, well, how do we make our operations dynamic? What does that mean now? And the answer to that is based on the cues that you're getting from your conversations and discussions with your employees and with your customers.
Mm-hmm.
So in some ways, it's kind of common sense in my mind, but the analytics of it is more scientific. Yeah. Sorry, Tiffany, I keep stepping on you.
That's okay. I have so many thoughts, so it's totally fine. But the point you just made about the information coming from the employees, I actually think that's the key to being prepared for the next big thing. We've already heard it heating up. The job market is moving. People are back to work. Organizations are building back their employee base, right? Job market's moving. You're going to have people leaving your organization. You're going to be looking to bring new people in your organization. So hearing and understanding that information you're getting from your employees right now I think will make or break your ability to retain and or bring in the right talent for your organization to continue down that forward path. I think the next big thing is already here. And if you're not getting that information, you're not already mining that data and looking to see what is the information you need to get out of that, you're already behind. So you're coming out of the pandemic and you're behind in the next big thing already.
Yeah. And to your point too, that's where technology advances become really important, because when you guys know this, when you're sourcing the talent, and this is, a lot of the larger accounting firms had a huge problem with this in 2017 and to 19 before the pandemic sorry. Is that their environment was so old that they were having a really hard time hiring fresh talent and talent that was really going to push them into that next level of scaling their business, because they didn't have the technology advances. They're like, I'm not gonna I do everything on my iPhone. Like, it's just they're not going to join the organization if the organization isn't fluent and is not just up to date, but maybe even a couple steps ahead. No one wants to be in a legacy environment, and I think that has also accelerated, and that's where technology does come in.
What you're saying is big chief tablet and a number 1 pencil isn't going to cut it.
We're going to have to advance our technology, Chris.
I really love pencils.
You got to at least have a number 2 pencil.
You got to have the number 2 pencil. There we go.
I remember we always had to have those on our Scantrons in grade school. So
it's true.
It was number 1, no good. I don't know why, but
yeah.
But the funny thing is when you go to the technology shows back in the day and you give away the tchotchkes, I mean, your pens would be depleted. I mean, they would take like 5 of them. So who knows?
Oh, how fun.
I miss those days of walking around getting pens and tchotchkes.
Hey, you know what? HR Tech's back in the fall.
Yeah, right. Have at it.
Well, Jules, thanks so much for joining. It's been a great conversation, and we really appreciate the partnership and the relationship that we've built, as a partner, but also just being able to connect with you and hear about your passion around digital transformation and how you're helping organizations move forward. So it's been a pleasure.
Oh, it's the pleasure's all mine. Thank you so much, and I'm glad we got this in now, because I think that Bluewater is going to be on fire.
Well, we sure hope so.
We're excited about
I like that plan.
Yeah.
Good luck on your new office, your new physical transformation.
Yes, exactly.
Bennett, there's one thing we just haven't talked about in this podcast that I'm feeling kind of uncomfortable we haven't gotten to yet. So, Jules, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
What do you know about goats?
The greatest of all time goats, or real goats?
Well,
because
Tiffany,
I really want to get a bunch of land and have a goat and a sheep. So
I have real goats.
Tiffany has real goats, and we hear about goat trauma all the time. So if you need to talk to somebody about goats, now I'm not sure.
Or if you need a few, I have a few.
I'm not sure the goats really exist, because Tiffany, when I drove over to your house the other day, I'm looking around and there's no goats.
I have no idea how you miss the goats. Like literally, you cannot miss them. You must have been looking at the wrong yard.
Maybe
I'll have to vet my decision with you, Tiffany, if I make that move.
She's got a lot of stories to tell and a lot of warnings to give you if you're going to go down that path.
Yes. Yes.
It's always entertaining, but thanks so much, Jules. If any of our listeners today want to hear more or learn more about digital transformation, or just talk through kind of where you are in the process, whether you're going through a technology selection or wanting to upgrade or optimize technology, or like we talked about, kind of reassess what you're doing with technology now that we've learned a lot over the last, I keep saying 12 months, but it's it's been
Longer.
like what, 15 months now. So
Yeah.
15
It's
months.
counting.
Yeah, exactly. Over the last whenever we can remember last. Let us know. We'd love to have that conversation and love to help at least put you back on the right track, or work with you to get you to where your organization needs to be from a learning, talent, and human capital management perspective. So we're always here. We hope you enjoyed our session today with Jules Carman from Sage, and Chris, Tiffany, as always, thanks so much for being here. Looking forward to our next adventure as we actually start recording in a real studio again. So it'll be a lot of fun to all be together again, and in that sense. So thanks so much, Jules, Chris, Tiffany. Thanks so much. And for those listening, we appreciate it. Feel free to like and subscribe or leave us a comment, and find us on YouTube if you're listening on your favorite podcast channel, or find us on your favorite podcast channel if you're watching on YouTube. And again, we look forward, keep moving forward, and thanks so much for listening to the human side of learning and talent technology. Have a great day.
Thank you. Thanks,
Bye, y'all.
Jules.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.